It was a fluke.
This is Rowena Dooley asking Sol citizens to report for duty.
Greetings and salutations. Greetings and salutations. It is wonderful to be here with you all again. This is Soul Citizens. This is episode 219, Lover, Not a Fighter. And I knew when I saw that title that was where I wanted to be. Welcome to each and every one of you. I want to thank you all for being here. Let me start by introducing our special guest this evening, and then I'll get to our Soul team members. And then we tell you a little bit more about what the show is tonight. Our special guest, pronouns he, him, but he keeps it simple. He says he just wants to be introduced as somebody who enjoys the game and makes YouTube videos about it from time to time. And that's Farrister. Farrister, welcome to Soul Citizens.
Thank you. Special guest. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, special. Absolutely special. The first time you're a very special guest. The next time you'll be a special guest, and after that, you just be, one of the team. So that's how we'll do you. But Farrister is obviously much more than that. He is on his way to 9 million views on his YouTube channel and headed towards 500 videos. An incredible creator. Be sure to check him out before he leaves tonight. And I know he has to leave at a timely manner around 9 p.m. Eastern. So we're going to try and get all the show in. We want to make sure that we elevate and celebrate his work again later on. But welcome. Really glad to have you. We also have members of the Soul team here tonight. We got JadeStawwatcher. Jade, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. It's always good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And Fastcart FC in the house, the Soul Citizens OG, one of the co-founders. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I was running a little bit late today. I just had my head just would not cooperate tonight, so I'm sorry about that. But I'm good now. Thank you for having me.
You made it on time. The chat didn't even know all that, but now they know you were struggling to get here. But we're super excited to have you. And Citizen Joel, that's part of the reason why Farrister is going to be moving with the quickness at the 9 o'clock hour, because it is the middle of the night for him where he is. All right. And so we're just super thankful that he's willing to check it out with us tonight. So lover, not a fighter, right? Lover, not a fighter. And the idea here is for us to recognize that Star Citizen is more than combat, right? And to explore some of the history of that with you, to discuss some of the areas of game development with you. And we want to begin with an introduction by Tony Zuravet, or Tony Z, who remains the director of the Persistent Universe. And one of the things that he says when he talks about this idea here is that Star Citizen, it has an ultimate objective. And that ultimate objective is to present players with a vast, incredibly detailed universe where everyone can forge their own unique path through the stars. And to that end, we're going to great lengths to ensure that whatever your interest, there's an enormous amount of things for you to do and obstacles to overcome. Star Citizen will support a diverse set of occupations, each with its own unique set of challenges and rewards. However, there is no artificial concept of a character having to select a specific profession or a character progression based upon gradually incrementing numeric attributes. The only thing that dictates your success or failure at a given endeavor are the actual capabilities of you and companions and the equipment you bring to bear. So that's Tony Z talking about this idea of a variety of things, that whatever your interest, there's an enormous amount of things for you to do and obstacles to overcome. Farrister, let's start with you. When you hear that and you experienced, the game across the time you've been in it and where it is now, how are you feeling about that statement?
I think for where we're at now, that still holds largely true, right? So things that we can do in game for the most part tend to be more based around your individual skills and your individual setup for that. So bringing the right ship or the right loadout of the ship. I think there are probably some more nuances that have built onto that over time. So things like reputation, which is a little bit of a gatekeeping. And we got some hints at CitizenCon recently that there might be some other changes around things to that. But at its core, I think that's certainly my experience of the game.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I can imagine even more, quote unquote gatekeeping around this idea of gang reputation as well, right? As a test for how that's going to evolve. But I hear you on that. Fastcart, your thoughts on Tony Zuravik's submission and where we are now and what journey we've been on towards this thing.
I think it'll take some people to get used to the idea, especially as the old school MMO players, because we used to classes and jobs or whatever you want to call them for different aspects or different ways to play the game. So coming to a game where it's just you and there's no skill tree per se, it's going to take some older backers and some older players to get used to. But I think once they get the hang of it, once they get an idea of what it's like, it should be fine. Hopefully.
Heard. And Jade, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that drew me to the game, that there is no artificial concept of, leveling up your character, that you are a Star Citizen. You exist in this universe along with all the other Star Citizens. And, your skills are what allow you to succeed or fail.
Right. Yeah. And the sandbox is deep enough in all those directions to allow that to be a useful truth, no matter what you want to do. Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of those directions tonight, and we're going to begin with agriculture. And I think we have a video for agriculture. And this video, I think, is called Farming Outpost 2.0. And this is, if I remember correctly, this is somebody taking a look at what farming could look like in Star Citizen. Is that right, Griff?
Give him a moment.
You don't have to answer.
You need a moment. But yeah, so I'm bringing up the video for myself real quick just to get an idea. Okay, yeah. Should be interesting once we get it up.
Because agriculture,
go.
you know, as we can see here, you know, is agricultural supplies, distilled spirits, medical supplies. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Let's take a look at this. This is by members of the community, but it's just, given what we have now, how people are beginning to think about what could be in the game. And how agriculture can be as small as, you know, some of the hoop houses that we currently see in the game, and that you can visit, and that you can pluck fruits and other produce from, to agricultural concerns like the video here. But the idea here is that the agricultural lifestyle, the agricultural experience, the agricultural pathway can include a lot of different things, right? Like, again, so from agricultural supply and logistics to distilled spirits, medical supplies, processing food, revenant tree pollen, stems, and waste. What are your all thoughts on agriculture as a pathway, you know, this non-combat pathway that people can engage in, and where do you think we are on that, and where do you think we're headed? Jade, I'll start with you.
Sure. So I would say that, you know, this is something that I've got some interest in, mainly because of, you know, we've thought this would come along with the Endeavor, you know, with the biodomes, right? But now we've seen, you know, the base building things at CitizenCon, and that's brought it a lot closer to me, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's great if we can somehow have the level of the depth that we have in like mining with agriculture. Like if you could somehow, you know, cross species of you know plants to get hybrid species that, you know, maybe are worth more, things like that, or grow things for crafting that they showed. We're going to get to crafting later, but you know, this is something that would be a core gameplay for a lot of people. I know a lot of people who want to be space farmers, and that chill lifestyle, you know, where you're tending crops or you're taking care of. We just saw, you know, we just saw the cow, the space cow, right? The
Yeah, the quasi
grazer, yeah. And so taking care of, you know, animals and making sure they get the highest output of whatever resource, which can then feed other professions, either literally or through materials. I think that's great, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, animal husbandry isn't on our list, but I think does fall under like agriculture, farming, the broader agricultural pathway. Farrister, your thoughts on agriculture, where we are, what you see now, and where you think we're headed.
Well, I'm so glad that Jade said space farming, because when you say agriculture, it sounds so serious, but what we're talking about here is space farming. It's a really cool idea. I think Jade pulled out a couple of things that are really important for me. So when I first read about space farming, it was on the Endeavor design, right? And I love the idea of the Endeavour, a highly modular spaceship, but there are a lot of big ideas in there, and I don't know how neatly they translate into gameplay. As Jade quite rightly said, where this really came to life for me was actually at CitizenCon, where we started to talk about base building, and agriculture for me naturally sits as a part of that. So suddenly it's gone from being this niche part of a specific module for the Endeavour to potentially something that lots of different players in the game could get involved with and benefit from. I think the other exciting thing for me about agriculture is it's going to be a lot more static in production than some of the other gameplay loops that we've got at the moment. So what I mean by that is if you're mining, if you're salvaging, you have to go to the place to find the things to do those things. With agriculture, it tends to be much more static. So if you've got your base or if you've got your spaceship, the agriculture happens there. And so the gameplay is much more around resource management and being able to export and import the things that you need to be able to make that happen. And actually, with some of the game mechanics we've got now, it's easy for me to say this, I'm not a game developer, but it should be relatively straightforward to do that because we've got the tractor beams that can move things to here and there. We've got the systems that allow us to buy goods and sell goods. And so I don't know how complicated it would be. And actually, if it applies to anybody doing any kind of base building, not just the Endeavour anymore, actually there's potentially quite a wide base of players that could benefit from that.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
just to what you said about, there's a lot of systems that exist in game right now. I don't know if a lot of people have gone to the new derelict sort of settlements on some of these worlds, but there are farms on them that you can go into, and there are harvestables that you can pick. So we already have, harvestables that are pickable in the game now. So that
Yes.
just shows we can get there.
Yep. Absolutely. Fastcart, your thoughts?
Yeah, we're not using the right name because one of our former members, Love Machine, used to call these botanicals. So I want to bring that back. Botanicals, what people may be growing, good or bad, or depending on what side of the fence you fall on. But yeah, first, you took. You mentioned one of my points that I wanted to make. How deep will farming go? Because I have to wonder, because we see how mining is now. So I don't know if they make it too deep, will it turn people off, or if they or people flock to it? Because, no pun intended, because it's so in depth. So I'm curious to see how CID will implement it, because like Jade said, we first heard about it. In regard with the Endeavour, with the biomodule, but I'm pretty sure that people will be able to make a plot of land on different planets or moon if it's habitable. And then one of the interesting things is you may be able to grow different things depending on what star you're under, because different stars give off different kind of light. So that'll be interesting. Like have to research and practice and experiment and see what will go in this star versus that star. So I think it'll be pretty interesting.
Well, you have to one extent or another referenced my main point about this, which is I see agriculture, space farming, botanical development as inextricably linked. Whatever CIG's take on the science will be, right? So if there is going to be a fundamental difference under different types of starlight and sunlight, right, in different systems, will that impact, to your point, Fastcart, the ability to grow certain things or have certain things grow in certain ways? The Endeavour and as a concept, and this idea that Jade started with this idea of developing new strains and seeds and new hybrids, for me is ultimately interesting, and I'd love to see CIG extend in that direction, right? As they start thinking about the science gameplay, I think the science gameplay can be an overarching piece of gameplay across all of these areas, but certainly agriculture. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one of the things that people may not remember is that a long time, quite a few years ago, they mentioned that CIG mentioned that the Xeons have certain plants to grow on certain planets or moons. So I think it'll be interesting to grow alien agriculture too. So that may be a thing. Hopefully, we'll see.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and in game right now, there's a company called Rayari Incorporated, and they're basically an agricultural business, which they do things like what we were talking about, where hybrids or genetically modifying a plant that can maybe only grow on a Geon world to be able to grow somewhere else in the universe.
So what that tells you is that CIG, at least on the lore side, is thinking about it, but it's even more than that, to Jade's point, because some of the stuff that Rayari does is in game, right?
Yep.
The Elysian Bloom, the Flight of Fancy, those are things that are in game now. So I'm glad to know, excited to know that CIG is thinking about it. There was one other thing I wanted to say about this. It's gone. It'll come back.
Sorry
I'm
about
old.
that. No,
No, that's okay.
I will say I'm interested in seeing people try to raise the grazer. I don't call it a quasi grazer. I use the other term that they use in IC, the crazy grazer, because I'm me. But I'm interested in seeing how many deaths per day will there be from people trying to raise the grazer. So that I'm hoping CIG will keep that statistic and post it at the end of the year or something like that. That'd be interesting.
Messing with my space cow, you get hopefully they get some space bulls in there to get the horns. The thing I was going to say was that the Star Engine video that we got at CitizenCon last year, every single thing that was in it up to the quasi grazer were things that you could do in game already. And then they showed the quasi grazer, and that was the first thing in the video. It's like about the 8 or 10 minute mark. That was something that wasn't quite in the game, and now we know we're getting it. After the quasi grazer, there's a shot of I think it's a prospector or something like that, or a freeland landing at a little outpost, and it looks like a little farm, right, with grazers in the background and plants and stuff. And I want to remind players that are interested in this lover and not fighter gameplay, of Jade's point, that you can go to some of our outposts now and experience this right now. You can bring a 1 SCU or 2 SCU box down with you, and you can harvest these things right now from these hoop houses and other locations that are growing these things right now. So some of this is already in game. Good stuff. Let's
Before
move
we get too
on.
far, I
Okay.
want to thank Drakenzog for the sub. Thank you for the sub, Drakenzog.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Very much appreciated. Good stuff. Let's move on to the next subject, in this lover and not a fighter, these things that are alternatives to combat, reminding ourselves that there's stuff in the game to do besides combat, reminding CIG, right, that there's stuff, and it's crafting, right? Jay, do you want to take a brief one?
Sure. The crafting system in Star Citizen will be different than that of a traditional MMO. In fact, Roberts likened it to SimCity's. Production nodes and factories will be present on the planets, but whether an AI agent runs one or a player does depends on whether a player has purchased it. If a player owns the factory, she has to manage all the aspects of production, from getting the resources to keeping factory workers happy, to getting equipment to distribution in the market. And if no player owns it, then the AI takes care of everything, including getting goods out to the market. So there will always be a market, even if players aren't currently feeling it.
Yes, indeed. And that, I think, speaks to this idea that it's another dimension on how players will be 10% of what's going on, right? That 90% of it will be NPCs, 10% of it will be players, but that NPCs won't just be holding space, that they will be doing things and generating things that lead to market forces and market activity as well. This goes back to no later than Chris Roberts speaking at GDC in 2013. And back then he spoke at GDC, and Gadget captured it. And he talked about crafting then. What are y'all thoughts about crafting Let's start with our guest, Farrister. For those of you who have just come in, Farrister is our guest here tonight on Soul Citizens. We're super thankful to have him, and we want to make sure that he gets a chance to talk. We don't want him to. We don't want to overtalk. I can overtalk, so let me just be quiet. Farrister, your thoughts on crafting?
Well, that gives a lot of pressure on me to say something that's going to be interesting. We'll see.
It's automatically going to be better than whatever I was going to say. Don't even worry about it.
So crafting. I have to point out, this is a technicality. We already have basic crafting in the game, technically. Anyone that owns a vulture will know that you can get your multi-tool and things like that through your little crafting pot. I think I see two different areas of crafting. So Jade's expertly narrated intro there talked about these big factories, and quite rightly, you mentioned that there's going to be the 90-10 ideally between NPCs doing stuff, AI doing stuff in the verse, and then players taking up the slack and finding opportunities within that. I think given the nature of supply and demand, I think a lot of the volume stuff in this will be happening automatically through the kind of quanta system. So the opportunity for players is going to be in identifying specific areas or specific places that can benefit from jumping in on crafting. In terms of the tools that we might get to do that, there was some suggestion as part of base building that some kind of more dedicated crafting options might exist with that. And some suggestion that with some of the specific tailored ships like the Pioneer, that we might get some crafting options that come along with that as well. I think this will be interesting for players. Anybody that has played other similar games, whether it be MMOs or RPGs, the feeling of having made your own stuff in a game is actually quite cool, especially if you can customize it. But even just the fact that you can say, actually, I built this is my helmet because I'm wearing it. I think that's likely to be a draw. I just think we probably need to wait to find out more details about specifically how that will work, specifically how much depth and detail will we get. I know some of the Chris Roberts statements talk about kind of owning and managing a factory and bringing in the goods that you need and managing the production and things like that. But I think that's quite vague. We don't really have a design document, at least not that I'm aware of. I'd love to see in chat if there is one that talks in depth about how that might work.
I think it's important for you that you did what you did there was remind us that we do have our first crafting experience in game already, right? In that if you're on a vulture, you own a vulture, you can craft certain items at that station in the back, whether it's a Cambio SRT or a multi-tool or a tractor beam attachment or a light SRT attachment. You can craft those with recycled material composite or RMC already. Jade, your thoughts on crafting?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that we were hearing about it at CitizenCon as quickly as we have, because again, I always assumed it would be something we get maybe when the Endeavor was about to be released. I know that they specifically talked about things like being able to take a weapon and upgrade it with the particle accelerator as a sort of a form of crafting. But this it gone a lot further. And another thing that impressed me was I think they mentioned that the RSI oh, I'm trying to remember the name of the ship now. I just drew a blank, but it's the modular ship, the Galaxy, right?
Galaxy.
Oh, the Galaxy. Yeah.
That there would be a crafting module for it. I don't know if you recall that, but yeah, I thought that's interesting too, because that could mean that maybe we get it before the Pioneer is ready. But I do like crafting.
They list a refinery module, a med bay module, and a cargo module, but they also have space for what they're calling other modules.
Yeah.
Right. And I think people said,
yeah,
people said, will there be? Does that mean there could be potentially a crafting module? And they said yes. So, The ones you can buy now are Cargo, Refinery, and Medbay. But that makes sense, right? It makes sense for them to have a crafting module on there.
But I think the Galaxy was also identified during CitizenCon last year, so that's what, 2953, as one of the base building ships. They talked about having different sizes of ships supporting different sizes of bases, the Pioneer being the biggest, but the Galaxy was specifically referenced, not with any discussion of a specific module to do it, but the Galaxy was mentioned as having a role in that, and logically you might assume that might involve some element of crafting.
The other thing about crafting, and I think Fastcart will love this, is that I see it as a natural thing that would feed a Banu merchantman with unique goods, perhaps, that someone could sell. So, yeah.
Yeah, Jade, you're giving away my secret. That's my whole gameplay. I'm hoping for when the Endeavor and Enlistment are available.
Okay.
And yes, then also we should not forget that base building and blueprint were mentioned as part of the Galaxy too. So that's something to look forward to. But yes, it's been a long time coming for me. This is one of the reasons why I hopped into one of the reasons why I started back in Star Citizen back in 2014. One of the gameplays that I'm hoping for is crafting. And yes, I was heartbroken when it said Endeavor may be one of the last ships that come to the game. No, the known ship that will come to the game. So it'll be a while since for me, but hopefully something else will come along that maybe I can hop into to get my crafting game going. Looking forward to it, definitely.
And we can naturally think about how mining for minerals and the types of compounds that we surface in the mining gaming loop might serve crafting. But there's content from Star Citizen or from CIG as far back as Alpha 3.7, where they make it clear. Dan Truffin and Jake Ross and others make it clear that the harvestables that we just talked about in our agriculture will also meant to play a role for things like player crafting, right? So the idea is that farming will lead to harvestables, and harvestables will be the fundamental materials to craft various items, and that combined with what you get out of mining, and then the scientific exploration and experimentation we'll be able to do there. We should see some interesting. It should be an interesting sandbox. Crafting should be an interesting sub sandbox in which players are able to do very unique and interesting things. So
I am just hoping that the CID won't make it so that if you fail at crafting an object or modifying an object or what have you, that it doesn't explode, or if it does explode, it's not lethal. But this is the Chris Roberts game. Who knows? That could be a possibility. But hopefully,
we can turn everything into a little bit of combat. That's. I think there should be some things where if you take a chance on it,
you think so?
Right? Yeah, I don't think it should be a comment. Yeah. Other things on crafting before we move on. Just want to make sure I capture everybody's thoughts.
I think the only other thing for me on crafting is there are lots of games out there that do this. So this isn't.
Yes.
This doesn't have to be groundbreaking. This is something that will enhance the gameplay, and like you said, of the sandbox, there are lots of good examples of good crafting systems to draw from, and perhaps not so good crafting systems in other games to draw from as well. So this doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. I think this could be simply finding something that works, bolting it onto Star Citizen, and then it benefits from all of the other gameplay, whether that's harvestables or trading or mining, whatever it is.
What game would you hope that
I knew there was a reason we had you on, Farrister. He's thinking exactly how I think about this particular thing. Go ahead, Fastcart.
Yeah, what game would you rather they pull crafting, or not copy exactly, but inspire them? What game would we hope they take inspiration from?
So I can give you my personal opinion. Other people may disagree. That's fine. I remember very fondly the crafting system in Star Wars Galaxies. It was quite complicated, quite detailed. There were lots of inputs and outputs, but I think that could potentially match up quite well with some of the other systems we have in Star Citizen. And I'm also very nostalgic for it, so that's why I think of that. But others might have better examples. I don't pretend to know every game out there.
Farrister, you are welcome back anytime now. You said all the correct things. and as a result, you are, down with the Soul Team. You are Soul Team adjacent anytime you want to come on, because there's a lot of people on the Soul Team and elsewhere who have fond
And
memories
chat
of
too.
Star Wars Galaxy. Um, we have most recently been involved in an experience that's in early access called PAX Day. That has a crafting system that I would recommend. There's lots of aspects about it I like, but I don't think it is as in depth in terms of driving a whole experience and life in the game as it was in Star Wars Galaxy. There are others who could speak to that more robustly than I could. One of the things that you said uh, that I wanted to come back to before we moved on with this idea of CIG being okay in some instances with getting a system in that isn't necessarily having to remake the entire wheel, right? And this is one of those areas I think that's absolutely right. Right, there are lots of ways to do crafting out there in the world, and for Star Citizen to take the universe of items and things that it has and just start plugging that in, at least to get started with a base, I think makes a lot of sense. I don't think we should have to wait for them to think about a absolutely unique crafting methodology. I think it'd be very straightforward for them to be able to plug and play here and look around the industry and say what's worked over here, what hasn't worked over there. So
If I were to pick a game, I would want to say maybe Star Wars: The Old Republic, because I like the way they use companions when it comes to crafting. So being able to not do everything yourself, but maybe like order one of your NPCs or uh, other account, not other accounts, but other characters you may have on your account in order to help you craft. I think that'd be something they could look into.
yeah, NPC integration into that experience is a way that they could Star Citizen it, right? To be straightforward. Jay, did you have a game in mind in your gaming world that you would want them to draw upon?
Not
How
really,
was
because
this? How was this in Second Life?
well, Second Life is different in that
Okay.
the crafting is it's not like a system that you'd have in a game like, say, No Man's Sky, or you said Star Wars Galaxies. I don't have anything that I can say that would top the Star Wars Galaxy experience, even though I didn't play it. I've seen so much about it since I became part of this crew that there's really no game that I've played that comes close to Star Wars Galaxy's crafting system. I mean, maybe what with Satisfactory? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, Togi mentions that in the chat as well. Satisfactory.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only other one I could really think of.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next topic. And remember, we're talking about ways of seeing and being in this experience that are other than combat. And the next one is cartography. Fastcart, do you want to read this one?
Yes, I sure would. For cartography, though the methods have drastically changed, the Imperial Cartography Center, ICC, carries on a proud tradition of charting celestial objects. This UE government agency is best known for their deep space scanning and astrographical stations that search for jump points, and for the elite stellar survey unit that assesses newly discovered systems. Yet the responsibilities and reach of the ICC extend far beyond those two departments, from working with the ARC to keeping the star map current, to tracking the Bear Comet as it crosses the banking system. The Imperial Photography Center is essential to modern space travel.
Yes. And the strapline for the ICC is charting the way ahead. Charting the way ahead. What are your all thoughts on cartography? I that big globe on the upper deck of the Carrack and on a few other ships always has me thinking about cartography and the opportunities that we're going to have here. How how are you experiencing that now, and what do you anticipate it being like? Farrister, what are your thoughts?
So I think this is something that is on the horizon. No pun intended, but I think this is closer than people realize. I think with the new star map that we've got and some of the things that we've seen recently in CitizenCon, some of the ISCs, I think cartography is potentially with us quite quickly. I will break this down into two different areas. So the first is finding cool stuff, which I think is going to be a very, very important role for people to play. Anybody that's done a large mining operation or a large salvage operation in Star Citizen will know that actually finding a good rock to break or a good panel to salvage is a key part of the loop. And if you've got somebody that is skilled at doing that, that can then share that location with other people, that art of finding cool things is potentially quite valuable. And all that needs for us to do in Star Citizen reliably is a way to sell a waypoint to somebody. That's it. You can already kind of do this in game. Anybody that's partied up knows you can quantum travel to somebody else, so they can be out finding something and you can QT to them. But it's not commercialized, and I think for a lot of the gameplay loops to really hit home for people, you need to be able to make Alpha UEC doing it. So I think that's fairly simple and straightforward, and we may well see some basic implementation of that quite soon. The second strand of cartography to me is even more exciting, which is what you were talking about that nice big star map globe on the top deck of your Carrack or your Banu Merchantman, or if you're like me, your Javelin. I love the idea of that. And actually, that's about getting detailed maps for people. There are going to be some places where that's really easy to do, and there are going to be some places where it's going to need somebody that's been there to actually map it out. And although we know kind of what's everywhere in Stanton at the moment, as soon as we get out to Pyro, that's a little bit more uncharted, and you might know where the main things are, but you might not know what the layout of a station is there. And that's where being able to buy and sell maps that you can load into your Moby-Glass or onto the upper deck of your Carrack, if that's your persuasion, I think that's quite exciting. And CIG have talked about that kind of map functionality. So for me, I think people that want to explore in the game, there's quite a romantic idea of, oh, you're going to be finding brand new star systems. Well, hold on, you're probably not, because that's not the way the game is going to work. But what you will be doing is finding cool things in the star systems that we've got, and then potentially commercializing that, selling it on to other players. And I think for explorers, that could still be quite exciting gameplay involving traveling somewhere new, maybe using the scanners in new and inventive ways, and maybe using some of the dedicated scanning ships in game.
Powerful. Yeah, I have a lot to say about that, but I'm going to be quiet. Fastcart, your thoughts?
I do not have a lot to say about it, unfortunately. Cartography is one of those game aspects that I don't really have an interest in. But as first mentioned, the BMM has a cartography station, but I think it'll be underutilized on my ship. I don't know. Other people hopefully find a use for it. But I'm glad the star map has been updated. We had a presentation last year during CitizenCon about the star map and its update, and that was a whole great presentation. And I think they mostly already integrated that into the game. So it'll just be a pretty looking star map for me, unfortunately. So I don't see myself taking advantage of it. Maybe that'll change when I'm actually 1.0, but we'll have to see.
I know I'm here because you reference the Arc star map a lot.
Yeah, I do like the Arc star map. I mean, but it's like a mini game in itself for me, especially when it came out in 2016. But yeah, I'll probably use it for charting my route, but that's about it.
Sorry, I was going to dive in. Yeah. I was going to say, I know I'm here as a guest, but can I just press pause on cartography? Because I think Fastcart has raised something really important here as we go through all of these.
Yes.
For me, the beauty of all of the different things that we're talking about today is not that every single person have to be interested in them. So for Fastcart to say, actually, do you know what, cartography, it's great that it'll be in the game, but it's not for me. I think that's a really important point to remember. There are going to be people that have no interest in agriculture. They don't care about space farming, and that's okay. I think for me, the depth that all of these different gameplays provide to the game is what enriches Star Citizen. And not everybody has to be super excited about everything. So I think it's a really good point that fastcart made, that, you know, it might not appeal to everybody, and that's fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, there are going to be people who are going to want to be on simply the consumer end of crafting, right? For example, right? But not interested in crafting as a engaging activity, right? I agree with that. Jade, your thoughts?
Oh my
Cartography.
gosh. I mean, how could you not be interested in cartography? It's one of
Jade
the
is
most
offended.
exciting. It's one of the most exciting potential things in the game. When you think about it, it literally is going where someone probably hasn't been before, right? It's that Star Trek thing, like Colossal said in chat. It does need to be vast and very useful. And when I think of cartography, I think of, you know, the Imperial Cartography Center and thinking of missions that they could perhaps give someone. When I think of the Imperial Cartography Center, I think of its contemporary and present day might be the U.S. Geological Survey, and you look at what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, they're basically doing every 3 to 5 years topographical mapping. They're tracking things like volcanoes and wildlife surveys and all kinds of things. So when you think about just what they could do on a planet level, forget other systems finding those, you know, whether we can do that or not, that's an open question. They've never said that we couldn't. But just on a planetary level, the amount of things, when you think of all the valleys, all the caves, all the oceans, lakes, streams, and that's what's in the game now. They forget adding new things like volcanoes.
I am very happy to be here.
Because places change over time. It's a dynamic universe, right? They could, you know, say, okay, well, there's a whole bunch of Copion, but they do migrate. So we need to know where that, you know, pack of Copion are now, where that big family of Copion are now. Like there's a lot of things that they could give you missions to do that involve cartography that are also are sort of a rudimentary exploration gameplay.
Jade,
Absolutely.
I tell you what, when you discover stuff and share it on Discord or on the community hub, I'll be there saying, "Ooh, that's pretty." But I'm hoping that I'll be able to show you stuff to make your cartography experience that much easier. How about that?
Yeah, no, we'll definitely trade. And to Farrister's point, the whole thing of being able to trade waypoints or potentially sell waypoints, that's huge. I mean, right now, like there are people who sell in-game items, right? And you know, for
Yes.
UEC. But imagine being able to sell a mining location, right? You know, like things like that. That
Yes.
makes this game it just increases the depth of gameplay, and it also creates emergent gameplay, which I know Chris Roberts is fond of talking about. So yeah, cartography, it's exciting. Don't think it's boring, because it isn't.
And
Oh, and
that leads into
I
something
like.
that
Go ahead.
real quick, that leads into something that I don't see that we'll be discussing, but I can bring up real quick. But data running, that'd be something that
Yeah.
11 out of 5 could participate in. So to your point, yeah, cartography could be a good moneymaker that way.
Yeah, I want to just come back really quick to the waypoint sales. I could very easily see that being implemented sooner rather than later. To Farrister's point, we can already in party see where other people are. We just need a mechanism that allows us to hold on to that, to categorize that, and then to offer that to others. And I would be a big purchaser of folks who went around and did waypoint collections of tourism vistas and sites to see right now, right? Like if somebody had put the waypoints together of all the rivers and key places to land, and you go to this river, you land at this spot, at this waypoint spot, and you face in the direction of 320 on the compass, and you see these sites, right? I would buy that right now. The other thing that the ICC talked about being involved in that I see over the longer term is scanning of contested peripheries, like the Perry line and the Vandul front, and involving, you could have a Rowena Dooley mission for folks who are able to go out there. They're not there to fight. They're there to make sure that the neutral zones are maintained, right, by scanning those. And then Farrister said something else about maybe not discovering other systems. I'm holding on to that dream. I'm holding on to the dream that we'll eventually get all the systems in the stretch goals, but that they will use proc gen to generate 500 other systems that we can discover, that aren't necessarily as developed as the 100 systems they develop and build out and curate in game, but that are discoverable, right? And so I hold on to that dream until they tell me no.
I admire the dream. I really do. And I think there is something so romantic about it. It's like Jade said, it's like the Star Trek, like going out and discovering something new. I love the idea of that, by the way. I'm just quite realistic. Anyone that did the Pyro playtest last year saw how many gigabytes that added to the download. And as soon as it was downloaded, you saw all kinds of leaks of people going through game files saying, this is here now. So I think the reality of the game is I would be very surprised if we were very surprised by something that we could actually discover in game, because chances are somebody somewhere would have found it another way rather than by playing the game. That said, I think there is still a lot to be said for, like has been talked about now, finding cool places on planets that people didn't know exist. Like the Flisser, the Crash Javelin on Daymar. That doesn't have a waypoint attached to it, but if you know about it and you visited it, and I see some nods here, so people here have gone out and visited it. For me, that kind of thing is really exciting. And so you can discover something that's meaningful without it having to be something brand new.
So, Farrister, I have one thing that I can say about the whole Pyro thing, and this illustrates what CIG would need to do in order to make this type of thing be less about data mining game files and more about getting out there. When I went into one of the Pyro playtests, one of the more recent ones, actually may have been the jump point test where we went in Evocati to Pyro. I went to one of Pyro 5's moons and I witnessed an eclipse at a certain point on the moon where, one of the other moons of Pyro 5 actually eclipsed the sun, eclipsed Pyro. Now, nobody leaked that. Nobody, that's not in the game files, right? It's a dynamic thing that has to do with the rotation of the moons around.
And you have to be there. You
gotta
can't
be
data
there.
mine your way there.
Right. And so the more this universe becomes dynamic, the more those type of opportunities become, something that I could see people trading, and letting people know about.
And I agree wholeheartedly with that. In fact, I make videos about visiting places that are in the verse that everybody kind of knows about, but you might not have been to or seen. So I love that kind of thing. And I think, Jade, that's exactly the sort of thing that we will get and that explorers will be able to experience. And that's a unique experience, because if you weren't there at that exact time to see that exact thing, you could go to the same spot and not have the same experience. But I think people will always know that Pyro 5 is there. So I guess what I'm saying is I would love to be wrong on this. So I tell you what, if you're watching this video in 10 years' time and I'm completely wrong, I'm so glad to be wrong. But I expect that the planets and the systems people will know about before they come along. I don't expect to be discovering new planets or systems, but I do expect to be discovering cool locations or cool things at cool locations or derelict ships to find or stories to be told. That's the sort of thing that I expect from exploration rather than finding whole new star systems or planets.
Nobody found the Pico cave for like a long time, and this was something CIG said was out there. They said, "Go find it. There's a cave full of Picos." That's all they said, and it took, I don't know how many years did it take for somebody to actually find it. I think it might have been 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the type of thing we want to see. Good stuff. Good stuff. We are close to the top of the hour. Griff, do we want to do our ad or our commercial now? Or do we want to wait 5 minutes?
I think now is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do it now. And what we try to do during our commercial is let you all know it's going to run for a minute, and then we'll come back after that. I have no idea if it's running or not. Oh, there it is.
Running.
There we go.
Started. Yep.
Outstanding. Yep. So if you are still hearing us and seeing us and not seeing an ad, that means you have made a commitment to the Soul Citizens channel, and we are very thankful for that. We're super appreciative of it. We crossed the 3,000 supporter line a couple weeks ago, and then we went follower line a couple weeks ago, and then we sort of went back and forth close to it. But I think we're steady over it. And what that means is that you've contributed mightily to the growth of this channel, and so we're very thankful for that. We continue. Part of the reason I'm involved in this project is that it creates a powerful, beloved community of folks that can be who they are and come to this project the way they come to it. And so thank you for helping us do that and continue that.
And we're back.
Break is ended.
I wanted to say,
you didn't miss anything other than my love for followers.
Yes, Little Maria, thank you for following. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Good stuff. Okay, so we're going to spend a hot second, and I said this to somebody in the chat, to Chew in the chat. We're going to spend a hot second on exploration, because this can be its own show. And we've talked a little bit about it in the context of cartography, but I want to get more quickly to something that we do have in game, which is cargo and hauling. But let's talk a little bit about exploration. What are your all thoughts on where this is, where it's going? It might be an extension of your thoughts on cartography. I'll go first really quick. Exploration has a long way to go and a short time to get there. And I want to see a lot more on exploration, and through the small of it all and the galactic of it all. I want to see small ways to explore and big ways to explore. And I think it's a big game loop that, if fleshed out, will see me engaged in Star Citizen at a different level with a different level of intensity for years and years. And if not fleshed out, will limit the intensity of my engagement over the years and years. So what do you Jade, what are your thoughts?
So yeah, my thoughts are pretty much along the same line as yours. We have to do something with it in a very short period of time. I personally, I've said this and I will scream it from the rooftops. The most simple thing that they could do now that we have this new star map would be to allow us to place markers anywhere. And if we set foot in a place that nobody has ever set foot, we get to name it. There's tons of valleys and plains and mountains and hills and caves and rivers and lakes. When we look at that map, they don't have names, right? And maybe that's by design. Maybe someday in the future we'll be able to name some of this stuff. And by doing so, that makes it, you leave your mark on the universe, and that you're now, you've got something in the Galactopedia that you discovered. I mean, that would be very basic. It also seems, no, I'm not a game developer, but it seems like it would be something that would be a lot more simple to implement than a lot of the things that people think of as tier 1 exploration. But yeah, it's just the most basic No Man's Sky, first thing you can do. I would expect to be able to do in a game like Star Citizen at some point. Only where it makes sense. Yeah. Like if it's a place that's already been explored in lore and, everything's been brought up and mapped. No, but, there are planets, and even Stanton is a fairly recent system, fairly recently discovered and settled system. I don't expect that every single cave's been named, or, every little river basin has a name. So there would be potential even in Stanton for it.
Yeah. Steinbender 1 with raid number 1 from Steinbender's channel. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate it. For the 4 folks that were rated in from Steinbender 1, welcome to Soul Citizens. This is a program we do every Sunday night, but Soul Citizens is Thursday, Saturdays, and Sunday nights. And if you hang out tonight towards the end, we'll talk about the other shows that we do, but really, really happy to have you. So welcome. Farrister, exploration.
Fabric 2, thank you for the 100 bits, 1,000 bits, sorry.
Yes.
And appreciate it. Thank you for that, Fabric 2.
Yeah. Don't sell him short. 1,000 bits.
Yeah.
Farrister, your thoughts on exploration?
Yeah, so I agree. I think we've covered a lot of it in cartography. I actually really like that idea of being able to, even if it's as simple as naming a waypoint before you sell it on to people, that becomes known as, this is, I don't know, Jade's Mountain or whatever it is. I quite like that idea. That allows us to build out the verse. I think the other thing for me that sits in exploration that we haven't explicitly discussed is going to be jump points. So we know that there are going to be jump points between systems. We know that there are going to be some main locations where those jump points flow. It seems to me there was a previous statement a number of years ago that you might be able to find new jump points and that they might be transient and they might not last forever. There seems to have been a little bit of stepping backwards from that in more recent times. But if we do get some sort of jump point gameplay, whether that's helping to map routes in the existing jump points or finding transient jump points, that might be another thing that would sit in exploration.
Yeah. I'm not sure they stepped back from it. I think the last jump point ISC, they made it clear that they are coming. They're just not coming right now.
And the static ones will have one side, but the transit will have the different side that we come to know and love.
Right, that small, medium, and large. Right. So they, for me, they reaffirm their commitment to those. But we don't have they're not on any roadmap. I don't see them in any roadmap at this time, unless I'm mistaken. The fastcart, your thoughts on exploration?
Yeah, Jade and Farrister touched on the naming bit. I want to say 9 or 10 years ago, there was a 10 for the chairman, or one of the letter from the chairman, or one of the older shows before ISC started, where Chris Roberts talking about we would discover something and be able to name them. Obviously, that's not in the game yet. Hopefully, that'll come in the game by 1.0, if not like the 4.x branch. We will have to wait and see. So looking forward to that. But someone is going to have to look at the mission of the name that we put in, and I feel sorry for that person because that's going to be a tough job trying to go through all that. But bless them.
It's 2024. No person needs to do that. AI can do that pretty easily.
Yeah, that's true. And and then you could have a person manage any edge cases, right?
Yeah.
Right, with an appeal process.
But
So,
AI can find even when people try to use like numbers to make profane things. So yeah, you could definitely streamline that process by having a person just look at anything the AI spits out and says, "Hey, this is sus."
AI is stealing our jobs.
That job didn't
Well,
exist yet at CIG.
we put this imperator in to develop AI. That's why we voted her in.
That's
so.
right.
We want to see some AI in the game. Okay, so that's exploration. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but we are going to talk cargo and hauling. And one of the reasons, and Farrister reminded of this in the run of show tonight, is 324 is out, right? And we are doing hauling and stuff right now. And I'll read this part right here. It takes a lot to keep the United Empire of Earth moving. And behind every fighter pilot, selfless medic, and titan of industry is a dedicated courier, hauling crucial supplies between the distant reaches of the galaxy. Hauling missions, hauling contracts are now open to all enterprising pilots. Players will play a vital role in the logistics network that keeps the Empire running as they travel from bustling landing zones to expansive distribution centers via remote space stations and perilous outposts. I went in early on with Colossal and with Griff to begin this process of understanding how to move stuff from the freight elevator onto your ship. and doing a few missions. And then I've gone on in 324 Live to do that in a significant way, trying to get out of this rookie status that I have. And I'm finding it very, very compelling. I haven't even gotten into the Apex cargo Titan suit. I haven't even done that. But
Atlas, you said Apex.
Oh, the Atlas. Did I say Apex? Atlas.
Yeah.
What's Apex? Maybe that's a Call of Duty game.
That'll be the Titan
Atlas.
suit.
Yeah, the Atlas. I haven't even done that yet. But I have really enjoyed cargo and hauling. Farrister, what are your thoughts on cargo and hauling at this time, and where do you think it's headed as well?
So I think it's a good way along where it's headed. Cargo trading was one of the earliest non-combat gameplay loops that we had, right? It's been many, many years in the game where you go and you buy something from one place for a certain price, you move it across to a new place and you sell it ideally for more than you paid for it. So that isn't new. The depth that we have now is, over recent patches, that became physicalized to the cargo grid in a much better way than it has done before, which introduced risks of things like piracy and things like that. I know we're talking about lovers and not fighters today, but that is a risk, and it all links into the grand picture of Star Citizen. And cargo hauling kind of is the same sort of thing, moving from A to B. The difference is that you don't own the boxes that you're moving now. They're somebody else's boxes, and you're getting paid to move them. For me, I think this is all moving in a good direction, because we want a good experience of people moving stuff from A to B. That is at the core of so many of the different gameplay loops. Even things like salvage or mining that are really embedded loops in themselves, they rely on this moving goods from A to B in the back end. And cargo hauling for me is the next iteration of that. I think there's more to do with it. So for example, at the moment we're just doing contracts for the AI. It'd be great if you could have player contracts within that. You know, if you've got players that are wanting to get stuff moved from one place to the other and they could hire a hauler to do that, I think that'd be great. And I think clearly there are a number of teething issues with it. I think cargo hauling is really fun. There are only so many times that you can load up your same cargo bay before it gets a little bit like, oh, this is getting a bit old now. So automation to help support with that will come in. But actually, as the game gets bigger, as we get into Pyro, some of the different situations you could get into through whether it's trading or hauling start to become exponentially more interesting, because suddenly you need to prepare your ships in a very different way. So I think from the actual gameplay perspective, I think we're most of the way there with this one now. I think there's some quality of life stuff that could come along to improve it, and some player integration that could improve it. But this is an old gameplay loop at its core. It's the trading gameplay loop at its core, which is fairly well established.
Yes. I hear you in that, and as you speak, I think about missions that we had, like the mission that you would go out and somebody was under attack, and they're saying, "Hey, come help me," and you go and help them, and you take out ships before they can take that ship out. If you take the combat out of that, you have the same fundamental mission structure for hey, my ship is no longer working. Can you come get the cargo out of my ship and finish this cargo mission for me? Right. So we've already got frameworks that very much lend themselves to cargo running loops of all kinds that are different than, station to station, station to planet, station to distribution center, to your point, which can become a little bit tedious. You can do some rescue cargo missions as well, type things as well. So, Jade, your thoughts on cargo and hauling, how you're experiencing it now, and how do you imagine it for going forward?
Yeah, so I experience it now, pretty much how everybody is. I have done a few whole A runs, to build up my rep. But yeah, I mean, this is probably the least interesting gameplay for me personally. I know a lot of people want to be space truckers. I'm not one of them.
How could you not be interested in hauling?
Right.
I don't know how you can not be interested in cartography, but anyway, I try to do a little bit of everything right now while the game is in alpha, so that at least I'm somewhat familiar with it. One of the things that I look forward to, hopefully, would be like you were talking about service beacons for hauling for other players. I know of an org that is a box moving service. That's literally what they do. Like we have medical orgs, they want to move boxes. They thrive on it, and not just the peaceful things. They will also move illicit cargo under duress, right? So they have their combat people that are willing to stand by while some pirate gets cargo to move. They don't no questions asked, right? And I would love it for them to be able to just pick up beacons that people put out, like, hey, I Togi's a pirate. Togi takes down a ship. Hey, I need some help loading this cargo. He sends out a beacon and they show up, right? I would love to see it move in that direction. And not just for pirates, but for everybody. If you're a solo player and you want to operate a hull C, right? I would love it for you to be able to put out that beacon too.
And that's already useful in game, right? So I've been doing some gameplay at the moment. I also used the hull A for this, but I was out salvaging with my vulture, and I kept finding panels, and I kept finding panels. So I ended up with like hundreds of SCUs of RMC sat at a Lagrange point, and I can't sell it at the Lagrange point, so it needs to go back to New Babbage. So I used my hull A, which was there, to take 64 SCUs of it back, but I've still got about 100 SCUs of it at that Lagrange point. I would love it if I could just drop a contract to somebody and say, hey, you transport this for me, take it to New Babbage or Area 18 or wherever. There's money in it for you, there's money in it for me, everybody wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Fastcart, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it'll be more of a side job for me instead of a main job. Maybe that'll change in 1.0, but for me it'll be more for trading, like buy low and sell high. And I did that in E, so I'm looking forward to doing it a bit in 1.0. But it'll be interesting to see how long it takes once we have like 5 systems, 10 systems, 20 systems, 50 systems. How long those trips will take, because it takes a while now, but it'd be interesting whether or not CIG is able to speed it up or keep the speed the way it is now. So yeah, it'll be more of a side job for me.
Yeah, for me, we're half a gameplay system away from another take on hauling that interests me just as much as hauling, which is smuggling. Right? When you click unverified missions, they don't all have to be combat based, right? I'd like to see some smuggling missions that require you to maintain broad ship stealth as you come into locations. And if you get caught, then you go to jail, right? Just like you would for violating other laws. But being able to come in under a certain heat and electronic radar signature, bring a certain set of packages in, get them out in a certain time frame, and get out. That's the flip side of hauling for me. That isn't necessarily about combat. It's more about the black market of items. And most of the time, the black market is just dark. It's not violent, right? It's just it's illegal. It's not violent. So I'm interested in that as well. Good stuff.
I need to address something that Soul Citizen said in chat. He said, I never left my cockpit and seen my cargo area. I know the BMM has a huge cargo area. I know the Ironclad has a huge cargo area. But I'm probably seeing it more by using it as a warehouse and have people deliver stuff to and from using contract rather than going out and going system myself. But we'll see when 1.0 comes out.
Yeah, I think 5 years from now we're going to be saying we go over to fast carts, and it's going to be a location where transactions happen, like the cantina at Moss Isley type of thing.
Fast Cart Emporium.
Right. You have a big sign up. Good stuff. Anything else about hauling and cargo? So how many of you all have used I'm about to say it wrong, Abe, Atlas?
I have not used it yet. I've seen it several times. Carvati put out a video making an Atlas into a Titanfall type of thing. I thought that was funny. A whole lot of people making content. So yeah, it got the community revved up again.
Because you do survive
Yep, you
dropping
do.
into orbit with it. It's very. Farrister, have you tried out the Atlas?
I've seen it in use. I've not personally tried it yet. I think it's a cool thing for players. I think people like cool things. Yeah, like you just need to explain what it is, and you're instantly going to win people over. I think.
Yeah. Jade, have you tried it?
I have tried it. Being in the Ivocati, we were the first to get it, and I did try it. And I did do the Titanfall experience. I didn't record it, but I was just curious. I think everybody wanted to, find out, will it survive? I don't expect that is intended, so I wouldn't get too used to it. But yeah, as far as its intended purpose, it's great. It's got a very cool way of using the tractor beam, that I would hope that, well, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't tried it out yet, but it makes loading cargo onto a ship a lot more streamlined, and I can see there's a definite use for it.
The only other thing I'll say is that I haven't tried it, but I have seen people load into it, and the physicalized button pressing is something that we haven't seen really since the animation to start up the Gladius.
Yeah.
And my hope is that it's evocative of the physicalized button pressing that they talked about on stage at CitizenCon that was coming, right? I hope we're headed in that direction, and this is an example of that. It certainly is the case for how you start up the Titan as I see it. So very cool.
I hope everyone's getting their wallets ready.
Get them ready. Get them ready. All right, let's talk mining, which of course is also already in the game. And again, another experience that can be had right now that is not combat. Jay, do you want to read this one?
Sure. So obviously, mining's already in game, and the first of several occupations that we'll be aiming to deliver over the ensuing months, this is from CIG, is mining. In many ways, it is representative of the basic design goals for all of the occupations within Star Citizen. Mining presents players. Sorry for a second. Mining presents players with a variety of challenges requiring skill and intelligence, whereas mindless repetition of a task and idle drudgery are explicitly avoided. There are no aspects of mining that allow a player to simply press a button and wait without concern for a result, or that require players to perform an action repeatedly without some element of thought and or dexterity coming into play.
So let me ask you all, do you all agree with that? For those of you who have done mining or doing mining now, do you agree with that? And how are you experiencing it? How do you want to experience it going forward? Fastcart, your thoughts?
I have not done it yet, but I did it extensively at Eve. I would spend 6 to 8 hours at a time just in my Hulk mining. I haven't gotten any prospector in game yet. This is another one of those side stuff that I have a slight interest in that I may do in 1.0, but I haven't participated in yet. But it is it can be a zen experience. I see people talk about those kind of experience in chat. It can be a zen-like experience, just chill, and have it like instead of having, if you don't have like 2 hours kill, you can spend like 10, 15 minutes or a half hour if you want to. If you got to everything for prep by the time you log in. But yeah, it should be interesting.
Do you own a prospector?
I do not. I have one in my backpack, but I'll probably get rid of it. But we'll see. Yeah. If I do, I'll probably get one in game with UEC.
Okay. Farrister, your thoughts? Mining.
Yeah, so we're 1 hour and 18 minutes into the stream. I'm really sorry, Fastcart. I'm going to have to drop the disagree. The first disagree that we've got. I don't think mining is chill. I think this comment for me that you made actually sums up mining really quite well. It is very, very involved. I really like mining in game. I do have a prospector. For me, mining is very different from salvaging. So if I'm out salvaging, if I'm out cargo hauling, that's the sort of thing that I do late at night as I'm winding down. That for me is pretty chill. I don't quite like the mindless repetition of a task and idle drudgery, because that feels like it's thrown a little shade towards my salvage experience, which I think there is a place for that in the game. But for me, mining is the opposite. It's very exciting. It's very involved. If combat is all about being fast-paced, mining is the fast-paced non-combat gameplay. So I think it is very, very involved, and I think that is the exciting appeal for people who are interested in experiencing an adrenaline rush without feeling like they have to fight. I think it's also worth pointing out mining is a very detailed gameplay loop at the moment. So we got it in a very basic form many, many years ago, and it's been slowly added to since then. So at its core, it's just about managing a mining laser, which sounds pretty easy, right? But then you've got different levels of instability on top of that. So sometimes it'll do random things that you have to account for. And then you've got different value of rocks. So there's an element of finding things that are worthwhile. And then throw into the loop that you can equip different gadgets and different mining lasers, which have different impacts on things, different mining modules. So this is a very detailed gameplay loop. If you want to just go out and mine, you can do it surface level. But if you want to go in really deep into mining, you can do that too. So for me, I think it's a great non-combat option for people.
Very good. Jade, your thoughts
Yeah.
on mining?
Yeah, so sort of like cargo, mining isn't my biggest interest in the game. I do, however, like rock mining, and I like hand mining for Jalonite, mainly because it takes me into places, right, that I wouldn't necessarily go. So it has a little bit of exploration onto it, and as far as that aspect, forgetting how much I don't even do it to like necessarily make money. That's just the bonus for getting to see some places maybe I had never seen before. um, so I don't do the prospector mining or mole mining or the refining or any of that. I basically go out to mine gems.
So I'm gonna give you all a nice little pitch here. Some of my best screenshots in game are from going out prospector mining, to exactly the point that Jade mentioned. You have to go out and find your rocks. It's not like salvaging on a contract where they tell you where to go. For mining, you gotta go out and you gotta find the right rock. And so you get to experience things that you just don't otherwise see, whether it's sunrises or sunsets or really cool shading going over places. So I think my challenge to anybody watching who hasn't yet tried mining, you can rent a prospector from a refinery station. It's dirt cheap to do. You don't need anything special to do it. You just fly it like you fly any other ship. It is well worth a try just to see what it's like, and it's very cheap to try it.
Let me throw something out to all of you as a question. And this speaks to a lot of the loops that we've talked about, but mining in particular, I think, reveals this as a question and potentially a problem. So there is what you find out in game playing Star Citizen. There is what you can find out on the Star Citizen website. And then there are the third-party tools, apps, and videos that illuminate. If you were to just use the in-game tools, how much of an in-depth understanding of mining can you garner just from trying to figure it out? Anybody want to take that one on?
So I'll take that one on. I think the way you frame the question is important. So how much of an in-depth knowledge will you get about mining? Not much using the in-game tools. And that's probably the same for most of the gameplay loops you can talk about. Even things that have very detailed tutorials, you are barely scratching the surface. But that's the beauty of Star Citizen, right? You can get involved in things at a very basic surface level, and then you delve deeper and you find out about, coupled or decoupled flight. Or you find out, we've got missiles that you can fire as well as the guns on your ship. Or you find out, actually, mining is more than just firing the laser at the rock and moving the intensity. And that's part of getting deeper into the game. So I think there is enough on the in-game tips that you would get started with mining. I'm happy to be challenged on that. I think there is definitely a space for the other resources, like the detailed guides on the SC website, like the stuff that content creators put out. But I think that's the strength of Star Citizen, is that depth. So if you're getting into it, you can get further into it.
Yeah, like I'm wondering, could you learn about gadgets? Can you learn about different attachments and stuff like that in game, or would you more likely to learn that from YouTube?
You're
Yeah, my
asking
guess
somebody
is you're
highly
more likely.
biased on that one.
My guess is you're more likely to learn it from a Farrister video, right, or a YouTube.
Yeah, right.
But I guess that's one of my interests. I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily a concern, right? But it is of interest that you don't, for example, see people standing around using FOIP and VoIP to ask each other questions, right? I very rarely see somebody come up to somebody else in game and go, "Hey, what's this refinement kiosk for mining about? Can you explain it to me?" Right? People usually have to go outside the game, or they don't have to, but they choose to go outside the game for those types of things. I just thought it was something that's of note, because if you are somebody who wants to just use the in-game stuff, to Farrister's point, you may end up with, if there's 5 levels to something, you may end up doing level 1 and level 2 and may never really figure out that there's a level 3, 4, and 5 to this thing until later or in some other way, right? Go Mob ATL, thank you for the subscription. 45 months in a row.
Thank
That
you.
is a long time to be supporting Soul Citizens. And as a member of the Soul team, that's even more special. It has a different dimension. Super thankful for that. Jade, did you have any thoughts on that question? Sorry,
I'll just dive in very quickly. I'm sorry to interject, Jade, but I just wanted to say, just on that exact point, there is a pseudo in-game system which helps with that, which is the guiding system, and that is about hooking up inexperienced players or players who want to learn more about a specific topic with somebody who A, knows a lot about it, and B, is happy to help. And mining is, for example, a topic that you could choose in the guiding system in-game to hook up with somebody who knows more. So I think there are some things in there. Could there be more? Absolutely.
Wow.
Jade, any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, no, actually, that was kind of part of my answer, was that the guide system is an excellent thing to learn mining, or really any profession that's in game, from people who really are into it, especially if you use it during the Foundation Festival, because people are trying to get those rewards. But just in general, people are very helpful. And I would say that's probably the best thing. Another thing is, keep in mind, is that when you look at the different gadgets, they all have a in-lore description of like what they're about, what they're supposed to do. So there is some in-game information on them. You're not there with a question mark over, okay, what's this mining laser do? Why is it different than the other one? But yeah, it's something where you're better off talking to somebody like Farrister or watching his videos than just solely depending on the game itself.
Very good. I just wanted to explore that a bit because, again, there are people who judge a game on the basis of how much you can do in game, and are turned off by how often you have to go out to a third party to understand fundamental systems. And I do think, to Ferris's point, there's some work that can be done there, but the guide system and other things is work that has been done. So it's important to acknowledge that as well. And have been integrated into lore like Foundation Festival and things like that. So let's talk civilian passenger transport. Right. So we've talked about agriculture, we've talked about crafting, we've talked about cartography and exploration, we've talked about mining, we've talked about hauling and cargo. But let's talk about this other gameplay loop that in a way can exist now, right? But can be more in depth. Fastcart, do you want to read this one real quick?
Yes, civilian passenger transport. Star Citizen civilian passenger transport is one of the more unique occupational roles that a player can assume. As with mining, discovery, repair, rescue, and scientific research, the focus is not combat. Instead, passenger transport is all about competing with other players and characters in much more subtle and diverse ways for the right to provide critical and necessary support services for the proper operation of the entire galactic ecosystem, where the endeavors demand a player's attention at key points throughout the mission, but the passenger transport, the journey is the mission.
Indeed. And why don't you continue, Fastcart? What are your thoughts on where this is and where it's going?
I have kind of an interest. How do I put this? The Spirit E1 catches my
Yes.
eye. And not so much that I would want people I want to fly people around in it. I want someone to fly me around. If I could hire NPC or maybe get a chauffeur to take me places like between my bandit mission or my endeavor or something farther away, I think it'd be a cool thing. And VIP missions and stuff like that in the future. Hope I don't know how profitable they be. Hopefully they'll be worthwhile for people who would like to do that. People are looking forward to the Genesis Starliner. That's been in concept since 2015, I want to say. So that's a long time coming. So I'll be interested in seeing how CIG implements this.
Very good. And Farrister, your thoughts on it?
I think, having interrupted Jade before in the last question, I have to hand it over to Jade to answer first.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
fair enough.
So as you said, CaptainSeriousFun, that this can be done with other players right now in the game. I know of Qantas Space Lines. That's sort of what they do. I remember there was the experience on the 890 jump.
Yeah, you took my point. I was going to definitely talk about that, but,
Oh, no,
go ahead and tell.
No,
I want you to tell people what
no,
that was.
I'm gonna leave that to you because I'm gonna mention a different experience that happens like every year. Authentic Young, her Authy's Adventures 890 jump. She does like a Halloween thing or a Christmas thing or sometimes both every year with a lot of other Star Citizen content creators. And yeah, it's really cool. And it just shows that you can do this now if you have friends that you want to fly around and do touring, or even if you have some people in your org that just want some downtime from bounty hunting or whatever. And I'm looking forward to the E1. The other thing that I'm looking forward to is actual missions to do this in game, and I don't think that is too far off, and I'll tell you why. I took an Anvil Valkyrie to Pickers Field on Hurston, and I landed. I opened my door, and the NPCs that were milling about outside all got onto the ship, sat down in the seats as if I was going to take them somewhere. And you can try this out yourself if you have a Anvil Valkyrie. I don't know if it works for other ships, but it shows that some of that code is actually in the game now in 3.24. So it may not be that far off that we have passenger transport missions. And it's weird for me because I'm more interested in this than cargo, even though it's basically the same thing. It's cargo that basically gets on the ship itself, right?
Yeah.
It's people as cargo, right? But the people get on the ship. So I guess maybe that's it. Maybe I like the cargo to load itself, and I'm fine. But I do look forward to this. I do own an E1, and because of Dark Knight 75, one of the Soul team, who this gameplay loop I think is going to be his gameplay loop. I also now have a Genesis Starliner. So
you do have one. Cool.
Yeah, I do. I do. After many times talking with Dark Knight, like he convinced me, and I got one during an IE.
Dark Knight. We need to catch up. Dark Knight, you are missed.
Definitely.
I will say this really quickly. I'm going to go to that spot that you went with the Valkyrie, but I'm going to roll up in a Cuddy Steel. And if they don't get on, then the NPCs also have taste.
Definitely.
They also have taste. The other thing I want to say before Farrister, we want to hear from you is that the Danish group Stellar Eagle Alliance created something called the Experience, and it wasn't that different than what Authy was doing. It was just a little bit more formal in that they were offering what they called the first real cruise in Star Citizen, and the idea was that they kitted out an 890 jump with a 30-member crew. This was January of this year, I think. and lined up a group of VIPs and was creating a curated experience. And I remember that the first time they tried to do it, they were sabotaged and destroyed. And I think the second time they were a little bit more sophisticated about their information network and where they were meeting up and how it was going to work. And I think Space Tomato and others got a chance to have the experience. So I'm not sure it's still up and running, but it was called The Experience by Stellar Eagle Alliance. And it was an early example of, and Authy as well, were early examples of how to do some of this. Farrister, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm very glad I let Jade go first because I've been bitten by karma now, and Jade has said some of the things that I wanted to say. So there you go. I think at a very basic level, I agree with what's been said. This is squishy cargo, basically. Person gets aboard, you move them from A to B, and you get paid for it. We do have an element of this already in game, and to an extent that we don't for others, in that we already have transport beacons. You can pay another player to take you from point A to point B. What we don't yet have is the NPCs to add on, and frankly, the transport beacons in game at the moment, you've got to be very trusting of the other person to get aboard their ship. So I think the NPCs are what would really flesh that out. But at a basic level, it's there, and I agree. I don't think that would be too complicated to do. Where I get into a little bit more suspicion is the advanced level stuff. So when you read through the design notes for the Genesis, it talks about, oh, you'll have your drinks mixer and you'll keep your guests happy and you'll serve them drinks. I'm thinking, really? That kind of seems a bit much. So I don't know whether we will get that level of complexity around this gameplay loop. But in terms of the ships that are in game, we've already got the 890 Jump, there's the E1 Spirit, there's the Genesis Starliner. There's actually any number of ships that have got passenger seats and potentially the life support to make this work. So even with what we have in game today, if we just had those NPC contracts and the NPCs did behave themselves and stand on the chairs on your ship, then you could actually make this work.
Faster, just make sure you tell the crew about any allergies you may have when you're bored. You don't want them to serve you peanuts when you're allergic. I'm just saying.
Space peanuts from space farming. That's right. Good stuff. Okay, let's jump into repair and salvage. Right, repair and salvage, and I'll read this one as Griff puts it up. Gomob says, "What's that bounty ship with the coffin in the back? Is that the Anvil Hawk, or is that the
Avenger, one of them?"
Anvil Aerospace would want me to point out that is in fact a bounty hunter transport capsule on the back of the Hawk and not technically a coffin.
Oh, okay.
Repair. I'll read this one. Space is a hostile place, and even the most skilled pilots will need to have their craft patched up from time to time. Fortunately, there are a number of options available to citizens to get themselves back up and running. Star Citizen's repair system works in conjunction with the engine's detailed damage model to create intuitive and engaging gameplay for players wishing to pursue a career in ship repair or for pilots to execute quick field repairs. The basis for repair technology in Star Citizen are tools equipped with multi-purpose lasers that can trim away damaged material or something construction material injected into a component's frame, rebuilding its structure. So that's how we repair ships, but also the same tool is how we salvage ships. Farrister, how are you experiencing salvage in the game? Talk a little bit about being a meditative Zen-like activity to cool down. And what are you looking for from salvage going forward?
So I love the salvage that we've got in the game. And for me, 5 days a week, my gameplay experience in Star Citizen is on an evening. And by that point, I'm not as sharp as I am on a morning. And so being able to jump on and do some salvage is actually quite relaxing. I think fastcart, you described mining earlier as potentially Zen. That's exactly how I describe salvage, right? You just paint the beam on the hull and things happen. It's already fairly detailed in that, you've got to find the thing to salvage. You could either take a contract to get there already, or you could find it in other ways. Or you could salvage ships that have been destroyed by players across the verse. And it's pretty fun. It's pretty laid back, pretty chill. and it gives you materials that are of value in the verse. So the recycle composite and the construction materials. We already have that salvage in game now, and I think what we've got is pretty good. We've got a variety of ships that do it. You've got the huge reclaimer, you've got the smaller vulture, but you could also be doing it with a handheld salvage gun if you were really wanting to do that. And looking at some of the stuff that might be coming along in Pyro, that's set to potentially expand a little bit more once we get Pyro into the game. From a repair perspective, we've got some limited repair options. Technically, you could use your little salvage gun to scrape some stuff off a hull and fix up a hull a little bit more, but realistically, we don't have repair gameplay yet. If you are enjoying using your repair gun, I apologize, but the mainstay of repair is going to be in the more dedicated ships. So I'm thinking here things like the Vulcan, things like the Crucible, which are ships that are designed to go out there and fix ships up, and potentially to get them back to somewhere where they can be fixed properly, or perhaps in a more dangerous situation to get them up and running and back in the fight. For me, I think this is exciting. I like the idea of repair being involved with either helping out NPCs or helping out other players who perhaps got damaged in a fight or something like that. And as Death of a Spaceman type mechanics might come along, that becomes even more valuable, because suddenly it's not worth just self-destructing. It might be worth getting somebody to come and help you and repair up your ship. And it'll probably appeal a lot to the people who like the support type gameplay. You know, for me, that was always, I like to play support classes, maybe did healers and things like that. That's where repair kind of slots in for me alongside medical. So I think it can be exciting. As to how much depth we get into it, I think that will remain to be seen. It could be something very surface level. It could just be, here's a beam and making things work. Or it could be incredibly detailed to the point of replacing all the individual components, replacing all the fuses that we now see in the engineering type gameplay. So I'll reserve judgment, but I think it has got promise and potential.
Yes, indeed. Jade.
Yes. So as far as salvage goes, I feel like it's, obviously the chillest thing that one can do in the game currently. I like going out after Jumptown ends at a location and just, just going at it, because it's great. I mean, the salvage contracts themselves are fun and interesting, but there's just something extra when you go out to a location that people were just blowing each other up, maybe an hour ago, and there's just all this wreckage and you're there to make money off it. So I do like salvage. I see it coming more into its own once we get crafting. Maybe those construction materials and recycled material composite will be very useful in crafting. So I see salvages right now. It's not the complete version of what we're going to get, especially like when you consider Maelstrom, it's further down the line. I look forward to where it goes. And yeah, that's pretty much it as far as salvage is concerned. As far as repair, I am really curious how the Crucible is going to work. I know it's such an old concept, but I just am wondering, like, as much as this game has become, quote, beam citizen, I wonder how much will be done on the Crucible through, any traditional means, as opposed to here's your repair beam. So I'm skeptical. Let's just put it that way.
The Crucible came from the period of time when there was a lot of development of ships, the Carrack, the Crucible, that talked about things like drone operation centers.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be very interesting to see if CIG holds that, because there's dedicated space on the Carrack, we know already, for drone operations. And that seems to be central. The repair arms and the drone operations center are central to the concepting of the Crucible. So it'll be interesting to see if they stick to that. Fastcart, thoughts on repair and salvage?
Before that, real quick, I just want to say thank you, Instigator, for the subscription for 32 months.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you, Instigator. For salvaging, it's another thing in Eve that I did a lot of, and especially when I used to do a lot of solo missioning, you know, running missions in Eve. So I would always salvage my wreck. I don't see myself doing that much in Star Citizen when it comes to mission running or stuff like that. But as far to repairing, I see repairing and crafting almost and similar. So I'm waiting for both of those to come online because I'll be interested in trying to repair stuff on my Endeavor or have an ironclad, and I'm wondering whether or not I'm should get keep the ironclad or go to the assault version because the assault version will have a repair bay too, but we don't know whether or not it's going to be just for components, just for small vehicles, or what have you. So I have to wait for that to come out. So I do have an interest in repairing, but salvaging not as much in Star Citizen. But we'll have to see how that works out.
Yes, Farrister is funny because as soon as you said, um, you know, you wonder about, I'm paraphrasing, you wonder about the folks that are using their handgun to repair their ship. I immediately thought of Admiral Kusanagi, friend of the show, friend of the Soul Citizens, Admiral Kusanagi, and how one of the last times I was out on a mission with him, we were all going into the bunker and he was still underneath his ship repairing it with his gun. So there are some folks who are interested and into that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. Great stuff. Great stuff. Well, we have come to the end of our show. We have a Q&A section, and I think we have one question that's come in. Fastcart, do you want to read that question?
Yeah, sure. This is from Pod and Face. In terms of food crafting, which new pod for the Endeavor would you like to see? Which new pod for the Endeavor would you like to see? That's from Pod and Face.
In terms of theory crafting, which new pod for the Endeavor would I like to see? Huh.
Yeah, because they have like, I want
Anybody?
to say 10 modules so far. They got the farm, the biodome, they got the super glider, they got the telescope, they have the hangar module, they have the science research, and I'm missing a few, but yeah, they have quite a few modules already. So what module are you missing? Do you believe they're missing?
Anybody have any thoughts?
Yes.
I can. Oh, go on, Jade.
No. You're a guest. You go first.
Yeah.
Well, I will be very surprised if you say what I'm going to say. You might prove me wrong, but I'll be very surprised. So for me, the Endeavor is about having a list of modules that are just out there. They're wild. They were things that we'd never heard of before in games. So like the biopod for growing your vegetables, and you had the super collider and stuff like that. No other ships had that. For me, I would use that glass dome that is used for growing all of the farming stuff and replace it with a PTV racetrack so that you could fly around your Endeavor PTV racetrack wherever you wanted in the verse.
Not sure,
Okay,
not sure how that works out with science, but okay.
it doesn't have to though. Science doesn't necessarily. Well, maybe yeah. It doesn't have to necessarily be a science module because hospital isn't really science; it's medical.
Hospital, that's one I forgot. Right.
Yeah. So I was so afraid Farrister was going to take mine, especially when he mentioned the domes. Well, when I see those domes, I see putting up some lasers. I see maybe fog machines. I say nightclub module.
Okay, there we
Okay,
go.
Yeah.
that works.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think I would like to see for folks for Death of a Spaceman who are on their very last life, who want to preserve their character, a cryo freeze dome that has the Endeavor pod function like a generation ship, that they can put their character there and always be able to come back to it at some other time because they know it's on their last life and they don't want to lose that life and all that advancement. They can freeze their character there.
Griffin is not going to like my answer, but bear with me here. How about a luxury module for people who can just go out and stargaze, or or maybe go on a safari like whale watching, and like you have the big dome for the biodome. People could go and watch that like a comet go by. I think that'd be cool.
That'd be cool. And to have the Endeavor go underwater dome would be cool too. And just look out.
Yep, and that
Yeah.
is we do have another question. It just came in, I believe. So let me see if I can pull that up real quick. This is from Totogi. How much PvE combat can be inherent in these gameplay loops until you would not enjoy them? PvE combat or PvP? You said PvE combat, so I'm going to take him at a word.
Yeah, how much PvE combat would I want in these game loops until I would not enjoy them? Well, I think Farrister spoke to this very early on, and he talked a little bit about piracy just being a risk, right? I'm not sure that I would want any of these experiences to be entirely devoid of risk, right? I think that there should be some risk in existing in the verse. But for some of these, if all there was risk, I think that would be a problem for me. So I guess you're asking me to modulate where I would want to see it. I would say, 1 out of every 5 times or 20%, if I go out and I have to struggle with PvE / PvP, I would combine them both. That would be enough for me. Most of the time, I just want to be able to go and do what I do. But that's all also system specific, right? We know that Pyro lacks UEE law, but it doesn't necessarily lack order, and gang conflict might, you might experience more of that in Pyro than you would experience it in Terra, for example. But you pay more taxes in Terra, right? So maybe, I want to be in Stanton where there's a balance between the law and the order and the taxation. So it depends on the system I'm in, what my expectations are. I think I expected a lot less in lawful systems that are providing the UEE illicit experience, and I expected a lot more in systems without UEE law. That would be my answer.
No more questions, please. First, it is up late where he is, so no more questions. Thank you. What comes for me for PvE combat inherent in these gameplay loop? I'll be okay with some. I don't know what level or like what CID could do to make me like turn me off to not enjoy them. If it's like, I would say like if I'm selling stuff, like some kind of local system police force or patrol force to come by and say, hey, stop your BMM, we want to infect you or stuff like that. It depends on how often they would do it. If you do it like 15 minutes, that's every 15 minutes, that's a bit much. Every 2 hours or so, that's fine. So it depends on how often it happens. But yeah, I wouldn't say that it would make me want to quit or whatever.
Okay, so I have to push back on Togi's question a bit because why does it have to be PvE combat and not just PvE, right? So, like, space is vast. And for this game to be believable, somebody shouldn't be every place that you go. And that's one of the criticisms of Starfield, right? Is that wherever you go, somebody is there. But that's not really believable because space is supposed to be mostly empty. So if you're out mining in an asteroid belt, like you're out in the air in Halo, why suddenly is it that if you're there a certain period of time, some pirates appear? Like if those kind of encounters are frequent, then you lose believability. Same thing if you're doing salvaging. And then when you look at these other, it also should depend on what you're doing. I mean, you're running a farm, right? How likely is it going to be that you're going to, have combat? Why does combat have to be part of everything? It doesn't, right? Some of the risk to some of these, and why should you have risk when it has to do with farming anyway? And think of real life. How risky is farming? You're more likely to get killed by your equipment than another person, right? So
Or a grazer.
yeah, or an animal or something, right? So
Right, or failing to cover your hoop house when the star flares or something
right,
like that, right?
exactly. So
That type of risk.
one of the things about this game is that it's supposed to at least have a plausibility to it, right? That yeah, okay, you're doing this. There are certain risks involved. Crafting again, why does that have to inherently be risky, right? Cartography, you're out there, you're exploring, you're cataloging things, sure, you might be in a place like Pyro and come across a pirate, but like if you're out again in the middle of nowhere, how likely should that be? I don't think it's that like it should be that likely. Otherwise, again, you become Starfield. That's all.
Barrister, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I agree with a lot
Our
of what's
last
been
question.
said. I agree with a lot. I wouldn't necessarily distinguish between PvP and PvE. I can see why it was distinguished in the question. But in terms of combat, how much combat should be involved, I do think there's going to be a balance. I think to Jade's point, it depends on whether you are way off the beaten track versus where you are somewhere obvious, where it would be likely that others would be. I think there's a difference between highly patrolled, safe UEE space versus completely unpatrolled, completely lawless space. And I also think there's a balance between risk and reward. If you are in somewhere that is known to have more valuable stuff, I imagine it would be more likely that you would encounter people looking to get in on that action versus if you were somewhere that perhaps had lower rewards, that might not be so attractive. I think it's important to remember that some of the ships we're talking about, the Prospector, the Vulture, they are not great combat ships. They are really not a match in a combat environment, especially against players. And so I would steer away from something that forces players you have to fight. Actually, the skill in those ships should be how do I disengage and get away safely. I think going back to the question, the other thing that I would draw out is how much of it would be too much for me. I played a game about 20 years ago now called Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I'm sorry to drop another Star Wars reference in there, but I loved
you're welcome.
that game.
You're welcome to do that.
Yeah, I love that game. Go ahead,
I
please.
love that game. For anybody that hasn't played it, essentially you role play somebody on their journey in the Star Wars universe and you travel from planet to planet and you do stuff on the planets. It's a role playing game. Most of the interactions are via chat and via kind of combat on the ground. But what they had in the game was as you were traveling from planet to planet, occasionally your ship would be attacked, and there'd be a mini game where you shot down the things that were attacking you. I found that incredibly annoying. It was nothing like any of the rest of the gameplay. It was not related to the story in any way. It was literally just a mini game to break up the planetary travel. I didn't enjoy it at all. Once you'd done it once or twice, it became a chore. That didn't stop me from loving the game, and it didn't stop me from playing the game, even though it was in there, even though it was interrupting my gameplay experience. But interestingly, it did change my behavior in game, because I knew that that cutscene would only play when I was moving from planet to planet. So I would put off moving from planet to planet until I'd done absolutely everything I could possibly do, and then I'd move on. So I think if combat was a part of everything in Star Citizen, that wouldn't necessarily turn me off the game, but I think it would be highly likely to change the way that I was playing and change what I was doing.
Fair enough.
Thank you for that.
Anybody else?
I think that's everyone. Unless you haven't gotten serious fun.
No, I think we want to bring it to an end here at this point.
Okay, we do have two more questions, but one of them is quick. It should be fast with the last one. The quick one is from Tim Past. Yeah, the Tim Past one is very quick. As we ponder the modules and pods that may come and ship and Infinity to Hot Tub, when will a BMM get a Hot Tub module, and when is the giveaway for fastcart BMM? I can answer the latter part. Never. When will BMM get a hot tub? Soon, TM. And when I'm trying to take a crack at that, otherwise I'll move on. Okay. This is from Madam Kusanagi. Do you think the upcoming mechanics are going to force people to choose one or two careers or specialties since they will be so involved? I think for some people that probably be the case, one or two specialties or careers. There'll be other people who may decide on a couple of careers in one point, and then later on, maybe a month or so, decide on something else. So I think it'll be fluid for a lot of people. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that there won't be any mechanics that force people to choose, but I do think people will have one or two fallback careers that they focus on, fallback areas. And then they will explore other areas as CIG and the environment and how they want to experience the game evolves. You know, what CIG does evolves. Anybody else have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for the dream of this game to become the reality, it should be something where a person's interest will dictate the answer to that question.
Right.
Everything should be deep enough to where they don't necessarily want to have to do more than one or two things if they're pursuing their interests, unless they're interested in more than one or two things.
Right. Farrister, any thoughts on that one?
I agree with that. It should be driven by the person, how interested they are, and how much time they have. I think probably normalized across the population, it probably would be one or two things for most people. As you've heard tonight from the various panelists, some people like some things, other people like others. But I think if you've got the time and you want to invest and you've got the interest, I think people could pick up as many or as few as they wanted.
Yeah, Jade, how can you not? How can you not be interested in cargo? You still haven't answered them.
How can you not be interested in cartography? Star Trek, go where no one has gone before.
And that brings an end to our show tonight. I want to thank everybody for being here, but I want to especially thank our guest, Farrister. Farrister, it's been a blessing to have you on. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. Tell people where they can find you.
I certainly did enjoy myself. Thank you very much for inviting, and thank you all for listening. I'm mostly around on YouTube, so youtube.com/Farrister.
youtube.com/Farrister. Make sure you check him out there. I also wanted to make sure that you checked out our merch store. I put the link in the chat. It's starting to get a little chilly here in North America and in Europe. We are coming into fall, and so one of the things you might want to consider from the merch store is our Soul Breaker and our Soul Bomber, and that's available at those links. And then also I wanted to remind you all that if you have folks or if you are a person who is new to Star Citizen, you can show your love to the team by using the referral code from the team, and you receive 5,000 UEC to your account. So just don't forget that. Jay, do you want to talk a little bit about our Thursday show, Soul Talk?
Yes, Soul Talk is where the community, can come in and basically brave fastcart's jokes. Now, you can come in and talk about whatever's going on in the Star Citizen community or Star Citizen for that week. We watch Inside Star Citizen, we discuss it together, and anything else that comes to mind related to Star Citizen.
Powerful. And that's Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Fastcart, do you want to talk about Soul Voices?
Yeah, Soul Voices, where you get to come in and talk Star Citizen with the community, especially one-on-one with Griffin Gaming RPG. He normally covers topics from Spectrum, something from Reddit, and something from the industry in general, or he may go on his own and talk about something that he finds interesting that week. But it's always an interesting conversation. That is Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UTC, and that is part of PodSat, our podcast Saturday, starting with Soul Voices and going to Afterpub with Captain Cable and ending with Relay Station.
Outstanding. And then next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, our show will be about the pseudoscience of Star Citizen, gameplay that claims to be both scientific and factual, but in fact is incompatible with the scientific method. Jade isn't on that show, but I expect that we will beg her to show up.
I already told Griff before the show, though, that I will be on that show. So.
Oh, you will? Okay.
I will be on that show.
The pseudoscience of Star Citizen is next week. So again, we want to thank Farrister for taking the time to be with us tonight to join this community. We're super thankful to have him. Be sure to support him on YouTube at your earliest convenience. Click that link. We are going to be rating TV Liquid. So when you get over to TV Liquid, be sure to let them know that it was a Soul raid. You came from Soul Citizens. Check them out, follow them as well. We're super thankful to have you here. And we want to make sure that we say additional sign off, but I don't want to do it by myself. So Jade and Fastcart, will you join me? Fastcart, will you go first?
Peace.
Love.
Jade and Soul. Thanks all. Take care.